Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Kurt Phelps, creator of Phello and founder and CEO of Global Network Recruiting, a high-tech recruiting firm. Phello offers professionals access to personal branding platform that will allow them to more widely connect and build their network. Try a 14-day free trial at HelloPhello, that is PHELLO.com. Hi, Kurt. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so grateful to have you here. When I heard about the wonderful work you're doing as a headhunter, working out there, helping both businesses find the greatest talent out there, as well as people find the best jobs for them. And you've launched Phello, which is a great app to help people connect and get the perfect job and talent. And you're going to share all of that with our audience. But before we go there, share a little backstory. What brought you into the world of entrepreneurship and working to help people find the best talent?
Sure. First off, thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it very much. I grew up in a small town, and my first passion when I graduated from high school was to become an engineer. Right. So I went to a really wonderful school to be an engineer, and graduated, from a great school, got a great job out of college. But it was funny when I got into the engineering role, instantaneously I realized I didn't want to be an engineer. It was pretty quick, right? So, unfortunately, it's part of I'm sure you know a lot of people that graduate from college too. You go to college, okay, I'm good at math and science, but then realizing it's not really the profession when you get there, and it's not something that really fits who you are. So, I had the bug right off the bat when I was an engineer. It was too slow for me. The pace was too slow. So I was fortunate to get into what we call application engineering, sales applications. That was my first taste of sales and the pace of it. And then I was really successful with that in a short period of time. And then, it was really cool how I ended up meeting this individual that owned a engineering recruiting firm. And of course, my parents were going to have a fit. I mean, they were having a fit. You send your son to engineering school, and then suddenly he's going to become a recruiter. And it just happened to be the owners of the company were engineers themselves, and it sounded really cool. It gave me an opportunity to work with the best companies in the world and learn all sorts of different types of technology. So I jumped in the bandwagon it was kind of, my parents were furious. I had this, really successful paying job. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to 100% commission, right? Sales role. And within a short period of time, I became the top recruiter in the company. And then a year and a half later, I decided to start my own firm. Mm-hmm. So this happened from when I was 22 to 27, right? That fast. And then, of course, I started my own firm in 2000. And what happened in 2001, right? Mm-hmm. The big old recession. So, it was, I'm obviously, sometimes it takes getting in the professional world to figure out what you really want. And my passion was, I love to build and create. I love to develop. So being an engineer, I'm very process driven, of course, but I love to create and develop things. And so I started a company called Global Network Recruiting, focused on high-tech companies around the world. And I've been able to work with all sorts of high-tech companies and build a successful firm here. And so, the entrepreneur spirit's been in me. Yeah. And then, I'm always trying to create, always trying to develop. I'm always trying to think of new ideas. And that's where, a few years ago, I had, as you can imagine, in my world, everybody's always asking me, what's the best way to find a job, right?
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, when I talk to 100 executives, 2 of them have job openings for us. The other 98, they want a job. So, right, unfortunately, in our world, as a firm, we get paid by our clients, not by our candidates. Yes. So over time, what happened is I started talking about how important your network was. And, especially as the digital world has changed and me providing advice to the individual, it started coming back to me saying, hey, Kurt, I get my network's important, but how do I do it? And it was amazing how, this is after tens of thousands of conversations when I asked an executive, how many people in your professional network do you reach out to personally on an annual basis? Mm-hmm. That answer was less than 20.
Wow.
All the time.
You know what this brings to mind for me, Kurt? Many years ago, there was a guy who had lost his job and he was set up in some Starbucks. Now, he didn't look all scruffy like he'd been homeless for a long time. He had actually just become homeless and he had just moved to New York like 6 months prior. Well, when he got kicked out of his apartment building, he grabbed the only thing he felt was the most important thing in his life, which is his computer, his desktop computer. And he set it up every morning in Starbucks and would start sending out his resume. But besides that, what really, really just threw me for a loop was that he spent the whole day going from person to person that came through that Starbucks, and this was Midtown Manhattan, and introduced himself and networked. He was out of Starbucks in 2 weeks flat with a great job.
Yeah.
And I would just say, when you mentioned that, how many executives don't reach out to their network and how many people, period, don't pay attention to the people in their network or building their network, how we already have those connections we're not paying attention to.
Well, it's funny how we, and again, I joke a lot with executives about it because it's the first thing they preach to their kids graduate from college. I mean, they'll preach it to their children, but they won't follow through with it personally. It's amazing, right? And that's where, and to be fair, I mean, most people really didn't need to. I mean, we were in a time, when I first graduated from college and my first job out of college, I joined this big billion-dollar company called AMP, and they were going to put me in this rotational program. And kind of the concept back then was, we're going to help develop Kurt's career for the next 10 or 15 years in a company. Well, that's all gone out the window, right? That philosophy isn't around anymore. So you have to control your career yourself. A company isn't really going to do it for you anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, the mindset back then is you stayed in companies a lot longer, right? So you really didn't have to think about it. Companies were more loyal to employees, so you felt more comfortable going to a company and sticking around for a while. We also have a huge audience of the 55 to 65-year-old audience that wasn't there 20 years ago. They're all still in the marketplace. So, you kind of had that mindset. You think about it. Most companies have retirement plans. You kind of got your 50, 55, you would retire, move to the villages, kind of the Orlando, the villages, right? You had a retirement package. So the whole mindset was different, but the retirement package is gone. People are living longer. They're healthier. They want to work longer. It's not even having to do with money. So you have this whole sector of the 55 to 65-year audience. That's millions of people that are still in the market. So careers are lasting longer. We're changing jobs every 3 to 5 years now. It just, it has to be thought about now, right? You didn't really have to think about it in the past, but now you do. And, shocking or not, I've seen the biggest shift in the career market in the last 2 years than I've the last 20.
Wow.
And you got to think about, and I joke about this, 20 years ago, I was faxing resumes, right, to my clients. I mean, faxing, how ridiculous is that, right? To every company in the world didn't have recruiters yet. I mean, it wasn't even a job description, in a company yet. Now every company in the world has recruiters. And, we had this whole digital age today, a $1 billion vertical market that wasn't even there, the LinkedIn's and the job boards. So it's pretty impressive what we've gone through the last 20 years. But what we've seen in the last 2 years, and the biggest shift is, when I say, for hypothetical, I'm looking for a VP of sales today. Well, today in the market, I can actually search on everyone doing it. That's the difference, right? Yeah. 10, 15, 20 years ago, I didn't have access to 100% of the VPs of sales doing it because the digital world wasn't there. Now it's there. I can go to LinkedIn today and I can search on every single person doing the job, actively looking, not actively looking. It doesn't matter.
Well, here, doesn't it, one thing I'm getting, Kurt, doesn't it make it a lot harder for both a recruiter company and even the candidate to find work and look for the best candidate because there's just so many options?
Yeah. Well, I think, from a company perspective, companies are getting super picky today because they have access to so much data, right? They can be ridiculously picky. But I think the candidate, that's where the painful part's coming in, is that the candidate's finding the pain where it's kind of a misconception. People say we have an unemployment rate that's low and there's lots of jobs out there. While there is, but the problem still is the company has access to so much data that you're a needle in a haystack today. And that's the problem in the marketplace is that when you go look for a job today, the company has access to so many profiles that it's how do you weed yourself out of that? And that's where, as I coach and advise on this very heavily, the only thing that's going to separate you out from hundreds of millions of profiles, right? You have to think it's hundreds of millions of profiles today is your reputation, right? Your reputation, the relationships that you've created, the rapport you've created. If you don't go by reputation, you will be white noise in a world of hundreds of millions of profiles. So I'm a big believer that, 20 years ago it was job boards. 10 years ago, it was LinkedIn. Those are all saturated. I'm a big believer that I think the crystal ball, the next phase of career development will be organizing and cultivating your networks. If you don't organize and cultivate and build better relationships and stay better connected, you're going to struggle today. I mean, the concept today of being found is over with. 10 years ago when you got called by a recruiter, it was a really good call because they didn't really have a lot of leads. Today, if you get called from a recruiter that you've never met before, they reached out to 500 people that look like you. That's a problem today for the candidate, right? Yeah. So how you're going to influence your career and how you're going to control your career will be by the network that you organize and how often you reach out to them. I mean, clearly, as we move forward in the digital world, hiring managers are more connected with their network. So why wouldn't you hire somebody that compared to somebody from a job board? Of course you would. Wow. So the point with it is, the people that are going to communicate with 15 or 20 people a year, they're going to be passing by a million jobs compared to the person that's going to be communicating with 300 people. I had a candidate a couple weeks ago, and this is a funny story. It's amazing it hasn't happened before in 20 years, but I had a candidate that accepted a job. And the last stage of the acceptance was reference checks, right? So we were coming to, I think it was around Friday that the company's like, all right, we're going to do reference checks. The reference checks went well. We'll give you a job offer, a written offer on Monday or Tuesday. And so we went over the weekend. Candidate called us on Monday and said, I've decided to decline the offer, even though he hasn't gotten it yet. And the reason why, one of the reference checks called him over the weekend and said, hey, Brian, I didn't know you were actively looking. We're building a brand new division. We'd like you to head that division up. So of course, a little bad taste, but in the big picture, we want what's best for the candidate, right? The person didn't have to move at that point. I can understand why he did it. But what I emphasize is, and this is the perfect story of, if you didn't use that person as a reference check, they would have never known that you were available to even present this opportunity. So how many other opportunities have you missed out on, Brian, because you haven't connected with your network? You haven't stayed engaged with your network, right? So it's that point of, as I coach this very heavily, your entire network has been built because of the companies you work for, not personal. So they don't think of you personally. Until you reach out to them personally, they're not even going to think of you at all when it comes to how you can help them. So I'm just a big believer that the world is so overwhelmed with profiles and saturated with resumes that, we all preach networking, but we don't do it. Well, now we really have to do it. Wow. Right? We really have to do it. And that was the reason I built Phello, was to help facilitate that.
You know what's amazing to me, Kurt, with the age of social media and, as you said, job boards and everything being out there, it is oversaturated, both for us and for the job market looking for talent, is that there's just so much noise out there. But it's interesting that just reaching out, there was a guy I remember, because I would work in receivables, and there was this guy who worked in a collections company, would call me monthly. Do you have any accounts I can help you with? Do you have any account? I used to get annoyed, like, stop calling me every month. But do you know, when we had a problem and we couldn't get money and we needed someone to come on in there just before legal and it was him. He came to mind because he was there. And it wasn't like a super intrusive call, but it was a little annoying to hear him call every month. But who's the first person we thought of? Him. That's right.
And that's kind of like that drip campaign, or that warm lead process that you go, the constant tapping on the shoulder. And again, that's, obviously that's a little different in the business world than necessarily in your career, but it's the same concept. The fundamentals are the same. It's funny. I joke very heavily with my executives on the fact that if you ran your company the way that you run your own personal brand, you would have fired yourself.
You're right.
You would have fired yourself, right? So, as you can imagine, in my world, professionals have such a strong opinion about what their companies should and shouldn't do, right? They have unbelievable, but then they don't critique themselves. They expect the same expectation on finding opportunities I go think about it. A company, why does a company need you? Because there's a lot of competition out there, so they have to hire all these wonderful people to help compete against competition. Well, you now have 200 million people sitting in LinkedIn. You have unlimited competitors, and you're doing nothing at all to compete against all that competition. You're expecting someone just to call you, and you're going to have suddenly a wonderful career and a wonderful job coming across your desk. Listen, those days are over with, right?
Yeah.
Just come to realize, and that's why the sad thing is that probably the last 5 or 6 years, I've seen the most job changes out of individuals I've ever seen, because they're still using the same fundamentals that they thought of 10, 15 years ago, not realizing that it's not just about finding a job, it's finding a quality one.
Yeah.
That's hard, right?
So
So
and, it's so much more than the resume, because I work, for consulting a number of companies, and you'll get so many resumes come in through the place you're at, and they'll look fabulous on paper, maybe even awesome during the interviews,
right.
but totally different when they come through the door.
Right.
And then the constant, if you change through staff constantly, how much does it cost your company to retrain someone, to get someone in that chair, get them to know the system, the processes? Astronomical cost.
Well, we're getting statistics, as we move forward here, 90% of, especially executive roles, 90% of executive roles are filled through 2 ways. Someone being promoted internally, which is the number one way. And number 2 is by somebody knowing somebody, right? So they're too important of roles. So the point with it is if you're, because we're, world's going so fast and people are so connected in the digital world, if you're constantly only communicating with 10, 12, 15 people in your network, there's opportunities being flown by you all the time. And again, and that's where, LinkedIn unfortunately failed, is the concept of, just building, it's just become a big database, not truly a networking tool. And that's the problem, is everybody has kind of jumped on the bandwagon of connecting with everybody, but no one's actually doing anything with it. Right. Yeah. And then LinkedIn was sold to Microsoft, and then it changed everything again. So now the whole concept of LinkedIn is geared towards Microsoft's enterprise path, which is that's why they keep changing the rules, because it's now owned by an enterprise Microsoft, which is completely different than the thought of what LinkedIn was to begin with. Right. Yeah. So Microsoft has their own goals today, which they should be. They spent $30 billion on it, but it's more geared, and all the changes they make are revolved around their enterprise concept, which doesn't help the individual. So that's where, again, my struggle is, with that conversation of now is, all right, Kurt, I get my network's important. How do I best do it? The struggle that I've had over the last 10 years with that is, you're always trying to piece puzzle things. There wasn't one solution that could really help you. I thought maybe LinkedIn would be advantageous for us, but then that just became it was very difficult to do that. And then it came even 10 times harder when Microsoft bought it, to be advantageous for the individual, right? It's advantageous to sell to some company, and, it's going to spend gazillions of dollars from an enterprise package, but the problem is the individual always falls behind. And that's where I struggle a little bit in the job market. Like, for example, job boards have always been free mainly. And then, so really who do the corporations care about, or Indeed, is the company, not the individual.
Of course.
LinkedIn, most cases, LinkedIn, it's free, right? So they don't really care about the individual. They care about how they can sell the enterprise level stuff. They have little things like the LinkedIn Premium, which is useless, but the goal is to successfully make the entrepreneur or the enterprise side successful, because that's where those are the people that are writing $100,000 or $200,000, not the individual. So as a career person, the individual, while it's been exciting to have all this digital growth, they've all been kind of at the bottom of the bucket. They just really haven't been that important. The individual hasn't been important quite yet.
So how does Phello and what you've created help the individual and help both also the companies bring on that great talent? Right.
So the way, again, the concept that I have around, and this is all revolves around this, we'll just say hypothetically somebody's 45 years old, right? So if I'm talking with them, they graduate college at 21, I'm looking at them as a 24-year company now. So if I put you into a 24-year company, where would you expect that company to be? Or if you were a lawyer today, where would you expect, that brand to be? In the corporate world, we really don't think that way. But in my world as an entrepreneur, my brand of GNR and mine is combined. It's the same. I had to think of both, right? Unfortunately, in the corporate world, we don't. right? It's very separated. People think about the corporations and the growth of their companies, not themselves. So I say, first and foremost, you're a 24-year company to me. Let's first set expectations. Where would a 24-year company be today? Mm-hmm. Well, a 24-year company should have a great reputation and a large network. Mm-hmm. So let's not worry about meeting new people. Let the 5-year person have to worry about meeting new people. The 24-year person, let's worry about organizing and cultivating and utilizing the reputation we have already. The world is digital. So let's think that way first. So there's really 4 components that I stressed around as I would coach. And again, this was the concept a little bit. The concept was the same previous to Phello. I just ended up starting to build Phello to better execute it, right? Mm-hmm. So the concept, first and foremost, we can't make good decisions in our career if we're not organized, mm-hmm. right? I mean, if I put into my company, any one of my clients today, the first 90 days, you'd be getting organized before you make any big decisions. So let's get organized. Right? It's part of the reason we don't know what to do. So that's what CRM technology was built for, right? Mm-hmm. That's why CRM is $1 billion industry. That's why Microsoft bought LinkedIn, right? CRM, they're a big CRM. So think the same, right? So let's get organized. Let's get our contacts out of our phones. Let's get our contacts out of Outlook. Let's get them out of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Let's own the data first off, and let's organize it. Let's see how big your network is. And let's separate the people we do know and we don't know, because part of the issue today is a big influence of our network is LinkedIn. The problem is 80% of it's useless. It really is. I hate to say 80% of it's useless, right? Mm-hmm. So right now we're getting statistics, 10 to 15% of your LinkedIn connections are of any value, right? And we look at it from 2 perspectives. What's a true connection? One, if I reach out to the person, they'll respond. And number 2, I can call them for a favor. If I can't do those 2 things, then they're not really a true connection. Well, that's 90% of your LinkedIn is a failure, right? Mm-hmm. So I hate to say it, and I'm very personal about it, and I get very frustrated. I'll connect with someone, I'll follow up with an email, and they don't respond, right? So the conception of LinkedIn was just to get connections, not to really network, right? It was like this. It was like this powerful thing is, I just want everybody to look at my network and see that I have 500 plus, right?
Yeah.
So the point with it is that let's get organized first. So we ended up creating, years ago, I would try to talk about CRM in my process. The problem is CRM technology was really focused to career thought process. Mm-hmm. So while people were going and using different tools, they didn't know how to organize it, right? I mean, they didn't know how to organize it in the concept of your career. So we created this new acronym called Professional Relationship Manager. We're trying to brand the PRM as saying, listen, CRM is an enterprise term. Let's use Professional Relationship Manager because this is not about your career, right? Mm-hmm. Let's organize your contacts. So again, the one part of the platform is we have a PRM. Let's get our contacts organized and emphasizing, most important, let's own it, right? LinkedIn, you don't own it. Let's get it out there and own the information. That's my struggle a little bit with LinkedIn too. I tell people, listen, technology is going to change. You want to have control of your contacts to be able to evolve with the technology. You don't want to be restricted to one platform. Own the information and have the flexibility. You wouldn't do that in the business world, right? You want to have flexibility. So these are your contacts, your connections. Get them out of there and own them, right? Mm-hmm. That's number 1. Number 2 is your digital presence. A big problem in the marketplace today. I tell people, as I coach them, listen, I can go to, say hypothetically, I'm talking to a VP of sales. I hate to say it, I can go do a search on LinkedIn today and you all look the same. I mean, it's boring. We all look the same. I mean, let's be honest. There's nothing. You could spend $1 billion on your LinkedIn profile today. It's still going to look like the 1,000 other people that do what you do.
Wow.
It's boring, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's 20 years ago, it was business cards and it was, paper resumes. Mm-hmm. Last 20 years, we've gone to email signatures and we've gone to online profiles and resumes. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer the next phase of development is going to be humanizing ourselves. We're not human yet, right? Mm-hmm. We're a bunch of profiles. We don't know the difference between any of each other. So again, when I'm reaching out to my network, I want them to get to know me personally as much as professionally because that's how the connection is going to grow. I've always had a personal website along with my corporate one. Because again, that connection is important. Mm. And I've already proven through the years that people already know in my network that I'm the president of GNR. They're not going to look at my LinkedIn profile. It doesn't help them grow and develop that relationship. So one of the struggles I had years ago when I had execs go build personal professional websites, so they would go get their own domain. They would go build it. and I'd like, all right, who critiqued this? Who did this? Who looked at this? I mean, they try to do it on their own. Complete waste, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is a year down the road, it never changed. 2 years down the road, it never changed, right? So the concept came back around and it said, listen, you're an executive, you have a family, you can't do this all by yourself, mm-hmm. right? I mean, that's why companies have people, right? Mm-hmm. So within the platform, we started building personal professional websites. So again, you're organizing your contacts. So when you start to communicate with your contacts, you want to have a link that has a chance to come to get to better. Because again, it's about building better relationships with your network. First 50% of your of an interview is functional. Second 50% is going to be chemistry. No one's going to hire a jerk, right? People are going to hire people they like, right? So again, you're still going to have to talk to people, but it's nice to see a digital presence that allows to kind of break the ice or build a better connection and find things that are more comfortable. Like today, I have my golden retriever who passed away this year on the front of my website because it was important to the family and it talks a little bit about it. And, I'm a human, right? Yeah. 6 months ago, we had my kids and I in front of Yankee Stadium. Mm-hmm. My dad was years ago was a pitcher and so we're huge Yankee fans. And so I got all the Yankee haters emailing me in my network, so I mean, that's fun, right? I mean, that's what makes us all human. So the second thing is, your digital presence is important now, right? As a professional, you wouldn't work for a company with a bad website. Mm-hmm. Why think that way personally? Mm-hmm. The third is, it's really the communication and the automation side, right? So, again, we're getting statistics. I mean, an individual should really have 200 to 300 solid contacts, right? I mean, you should really have not 15. That's ridiculous. 1,000, you're never going to maintain that. 250, 300 solid, good relationships at the right level that you're at, right? Well, you have to have the flexibility of automation. You can't always send them an individual email. Sometimes you got to send a bulk email out to that network. And so one of the things we talk about is automation. All of our companies are automated now. You need to learn how to automate too and use technology to help you automate. There's going to be times you can send individual emails, and there's going to be times you want to communicate with that network on a larger scale. We've figured out in the business world, you now need to think about it in your own personal brand. So the third component of the Phello platform is the ability to have the choice of automating. And I stress this very heavily is that you would never in-mail your customer. Don't email, or don't in-mail your network. The person. Don't link and in-mail them. I mean, you should be emailing them, right? I mean, I've got a 10-year relationship with somebody. I'm not going to in-mail them. I mean, right? Less than 23% of the people in LinkedIn log in once a month.
Wow.
Right? So 75% aren't even logging in. 20% of the market today are actively looking. So if less than 23% of the people are logging in, who's really using the platform? The people that are actively looking. So if you're looking for a job, go to LinkedIn. But the point is it's not networking, right? It's not digging the well. The point with it is make it easy for your network to communicate back and forth, which is I want to see an email come to me. I want to get my mobile device and I want to reply back. I don't want to have to log into LinkedIn to respond to your email. Yeah. It's not very professional. It's impersonal.
Yes.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, sometimes you're going to want to text a person. Sometimes you're going to call them. Sometimes you're going to email them. That's why I'm saying own the data. So, the key with it is so kind of like the three fundamentals here are 1, strong digital presence, 2, own your contacts and organize them to know who you should be communicating with. 3 is, learn how to automate, learn to directly email your network and automate how you do that. And then the fourth thing, which is the most important that we try to do within the Phello platform is provide the advice, right? I mean, you're not going to stay on top of it. I don't care how good you think you are. It's evolving for me over the last 20 years. And it's my job and my profession every day to stay connected with my network. It's not yours. Yeah. So part of the value of the platform is, what emails should you send out? How often, how should I organize my contacts? Who's critiquing your personal website? When I reach out to my network, how should I handle the response? The wonderful thing here is that even though my end goal may be trying to get a job from my client, well, I still have to say that the process of communicating with your network is the same as much as a candidate. I'm a big Phello user as much as my executives are. We have this, the process can be the same, even though our end goal is different. We have large networks. We organize them very much the same. And the message and the communication is very much the same, because when you're dealing with people that you've already met, you're not going to sell them. You're not going to pitch them, right? Yeah. I could literally send an email to you 6 months from now. Hey, Christine, I hope you're having a wonderful spring. We'd love to catch up over the next couple of weeks. What's your schedule like? Why? Because we know each other now.
Yeah.
Right. So I can do that with, 40 other people. Right. So I can start to automate how I communicate, because I'm using email as the avenue to create the message, but I'm not going to sell people I've already met. Yeah. I just want to touch base with them a couple times a year.
Yeah. And like that guy I told you about earlier, who just would basically, how you doing? Is there anything I can support you with? And I knew what exactly he needed, he was asking, but it wasn't a hard push sales, whatever. And just keeping himself out there, knowing that he existed to do that function. When I needed it, he's the first person I thought of. And you make another really good point, Kurt, and that is how important your online presence is, and companies really look at this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because I work with so many different companies. When I talk to them, their recruiting HR department really look at their candidates, email, Facebook, LinkedIn, you got it. They're looking out there to see what your presence is all about. If you have something that doesn't mesh with their culture, you're not going to be asked on board. So it really does behoove you to really understand what is your presence online, whether you're paying attention to it or not. What is the vibe you're giving off when you're online?
Well, you have to, as we evolve in the artificial intelligence world, I think what you're going to see is the technology evolves is, when somebody comes up on a profile, suddenly, and they're going to select a button, and the system's going to search every social media site in the world to see if there's any problem with that particular candidate. Mm-hmm. And that's why I tell people, and this is just my philosophy on, if you're getting to your job search to be a point where a company has to do that, that means you're not using relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a problem. If we're getting to the point where artificial intelligence in this commodity world is going to be the choices of how you find jobs, you're going to have a struggle with it. The reality is we should be looking more in the world of, because the digital world is here, we're more connected with our networks. So we're finding better jobs than we are trying to sell the fact of artificial intelligence is allowing you to do job search and resume searches easier, right? Because as a candidate, you're going to be changing jobs a lot if you're going to companies that you've never met before. Yes, 5-year people, 10-year people have to do that because they're building their network. But when you're starting to get to 20, 25, 30, 35 years in your network, it's almost like here. If I'm not doing a good job with GNR, if 95% of my jobs coming across my desk are from people I've never met before. I mean, by the time I've gotten to 20 years, I should be having more and more jobs coming across my desk because I've done a great job of networking and building a rapport. It shouldn't be any different in your career, and you can't use the excuse. So typical excuses, right? I don't know how to do it. Well, Phello's here. There's no excuse, right? I don't know how to be organized. Well, Phello's here. I'm shy. I'll have CMOs that literally will say, I have a really wonderful CMO called Mark Perini, and he's a member of Phello, and he goes, Kurt, I'm a CMO. And I will sell companies. I don't have a problem selling companies. But when it came to selling myself, I'm shy. I'm fearful. And he goes, the problem is we've all made excuses. We don't have time. We're shy to do it. We don't know how to do it. All those kind of things. And that's one of the things that, there was always an excuse. So what do? You go the easy route and you call a recruiter and think a recruiter is going to help you find a job. Or you go to the job board and think you're going to, and again, that philosophy just isn't going to work. I tell people today, if you're doing your job search the same way you would have done 5 years ago or 10 years ago, remember, job boards have been around for 15 years. LinkedIn's been around for 15 years. Then you're in trouble. No company can be doing the same thing. Mm-mm. You can't be either. And that's where the evolution needs to be. And as we move forward is, people are going to, 95% of everybody's network in the corporate world will be looking for a job in the next 3 to 5 years. Wow. Just because the mindset of how we change jobs a lot more often today. Mm-hmm. So that person painfully, when they have to go look, they're going to find out how difficult it is for the first time in their life because they haven't made their network important.
Wow.
Right.
Well, they're going to change that because Phello is going to help them. Share how they can get started with Phello today.
So basically, hellophello.com is the kind of like, people always ask me, where did Phello come from? And I sell it so hard because I'm very thankful for the person that it's sad, the person that came up with the the name of Phello, died last year of brain cancer. She was
wow.
a young, wonderful mother. And I was, I was struggling to come up with a name. It's painful. If you ever come up with a company name before, it is stressful, right? You're coming up with a name, suddenly you go look up and the domain's gone. I mean, it's just a stressful environment. So I finally went to her, and I loved it because the Phello basically is three things. One is it uses my name because it's my process of how I stay connected with my network. So it's my brand. Mm-hmm. Two is in the high tech world, Phellos lead companies, right? In the high tech world. And three is I sell to everybody. Because you're dealing with your network, you don't just sell them. Just reach out to them and say hello. Mm-hmm. So we have Phello. Yeah. So we ended up having Hello Phello. So, you come to hellophello.com. The first 14 days are free. I will tell you, every member that joined is still here, even from the first one, before Phello was even created. So I'll tell this to everybody. You have to invest into something. You have to have something help you. You can't figure this all on your own. We're the first CRM in the world that's focusing on your career. You come to us, you can ask us questions. Again, this isn't our first rodeo. So we've done this a lot of other people. So you don't have to do this alone anymore. You don't have to be afraid to reach out to your network, because we're going to help and guide you on what to say. It's not, you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. So I think that's important to recognize that it's not just a CRM to organize and import your contacts. No. We're here to provide the advice as much as the organization. I'm using 20 years of working with professionals around the world, not only as a business development, but working with executives and companies all over the world. And now I've put it into a platform. And as I tell people, back in the day when an executive would come to a firm like us or an individual like myself to work on personal brand, mm-hmm. shockingly, people would spend $30,000 on personal branding because it was so time consent. There was so much time and effort put into it. Today, it's software as a service. You gotta love it, right? I'm a tech guy. Software as a service has changed the world. It's now, all right, you have two platforms, $20 a month or $50 a month. I mean, it's a wonderful thing what technology has done is where now it's all made it cost effective, where it's okay. I tell people, you're asking me to have a client that wants to invest into you, mm-hmm. right? And then you're not going to take this job unless that company is investing in itself. Yeah. Well, what are you doing? Are you investing in yourself at all? Are you investing time and money or anything? Well, don't contradict that process. Time, money, and advice you have to put into your career now. And it doesn't have to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. You go spend $10 at Netflix per month. Spend a couple, if you don't, if you don't use Phello, spend some money managing and organizing your contacts, because you're the perfect person to invest into. You shouldn't be afraid to invest into yourself. And the wonderful thing is we have a platform to help facilitate that today. And I can confidently say, and again, I always kind of knock on wood, we have a 100% success rate. Why? It's your network. Yeah. Thankfully, we haven't had one member that no one liked them. Yeah. It's your network. It's just getting organized and helping us, in a professional way to organize, in a professional way to communicate and reach out to the network and be consistent with it. Mm-hmm. It's not like you trying to go out and I have some magic wand to build the perfect resume to submit to, Google. That's going to get you the perfect job. No one has that magic wand, right? But you have a lot of people you've met through the years, and I'm sure you have a wonderful reputation. We're going to help you get organized and communicate consistently with that network, and we're going to be here to help you through that process in a cost-effective way.
Wow.
Right?
This is so amazing to me. Just this week, I have a old close friend who called me out in the job market again and frustrated. She went to a number of interviews, said the agencies weren't helping her enough get a job. And I said, well, really, you're not paying them. It's the people who are the jobs that are paying them. But right. I could tell just hearing our interview today that she's thinking the old mindset. Yeah, that agent didn't do a good job on me. That headhunter did not help me out. And you know what? It's like you were saying, she's going to have to get out there and really help herself out. And she has a lot of experience. Now she just has to plug in, get that network in order, and start using it. And this, I'm giving her this interview.
She needs to think less about her experience and think more about her relationships. We get, when we look for a job, we suddenly think about resumes and putting bullets together. Who cares about your experience? What makes you good today is the relationships you've built. And they already know what you're good at. Let's utilize what they think you're good at to help create opportunities for yourself.
Awesome. This has been so fabulous. I'm so grateful for you sharing all the businesses out there, whether you're a business owner or whether you're out there in a job thinking about starting your own business someday. Phello can help you out. Go to Phello, which is PHELLO.com, everyone.
Yes.
And Kurt, I just have to thank you again for sharing your brilliance and wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend and a wonderful holiday.
You betcha. Have a wonderful holiday. Take care.
All right. Have a great day.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.